What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV. Welcome back to another live stream for you guys. We have got Mr. Tim Sherwood in the house today. Big up to you, Tim. Tactics Tim.
Tactics Tim.
In his Gilet.
I think it's time. Do you know what day? It felt like it was a Gilet kind of day. So didn't realise that the Tim Sherwood quips would come, and then you reminded me. So I'm here for them.
Last day in England today. Going back to Canada tomorrow.
Yeah, last full day till April. Spend some time with my brothers in U2 and Sammy, obviously. Then go see the nephews and niece. And then tomorrow, back home to Toronto and some lovely minus 20, 30 degrees coming in the next month or so for a few months.
And it was only right for Tottenham to send you off in a true Tottenham fashion back to Canada.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people go, Daigle's been back and we've played 3, 1-1, lost 2, and it's my fault. So... that means
you are the problem. You are the problem.
Well, that means that we're going to beat Man City away when I'm back home.
Probably.
Okay, so then
take one for the team.
There you go. I'll always take one for the team.
But we're going to be reacting to Hugo Lloris's book today. A lot of quotes has been coming out from the book, and some really interesting snippets on Daniel Levy. Just
so happier topics we're picking up the Tottenham's lost to Ipswich. Is that what we're saying?
Exactly. He's talked about his life under Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte. He also speaks about the Amazon documentary as well, which was quite interesting. So there's quite a lot to get into. So I guess without further ado, let's
story
start
time.
Off. Yeah, exactly.
Hugo. Once upon a time.
The first bit we're going to talk about is his experience playing for Spurs, along with disappointment, bitter memories, and lifting the veil on significant moments. And he says... it's quite long, so you've got to bear with me. I don't know if we should take it like bit by bit, or we should just read out the whole segment. What do you guys reckon?
Bit by, not like, I guess like every 3 paragraphs.
Every 3 paragraphs. I don't know. So the first bit goes, I really like what I see. He's talking about Ange Postecoglou. He says, I really like what I see, and I believe they are going in the right direction. They have a proper football style and mentality, and I think Postecoglou brought exactly that the club needed at this moment: freshness and a new fan expectation. That's probably why I felt really heavy when we were with Jose or Antonio. It was a different football style. As long as you keep winning, there is no problem. But as soon as you start to lose 1 or 2 games, the fans get even more frustrated, and you can feel it at the stadium, especially under Mourinho and Conte. Ange has a great personality, and I think he's building something important. Everything can change from one day to another, but I think the team has character, a personality to keep growing, and I think they're going to compete for trophies this season like a League Cup. Then he says, when you look at the last 3 years, Spurs have been really active in the transfer market, investing lots in new players on freshness, and that's what the club needed to create a new dynamic. And then he says, after the Champions League final, the club was not ready to invest. Well, we'll just get into that bit in a bit, but... yeah, I mean, I guess it's not much in that, but, you know, it's good what he's saying, that he can see it as a professional footballer, that he thinks the club are going in the right direction under Ange Postecoglou being a former captain of the club as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear from him about where they were, where the club were under Mourinho and Conte, and how he could feel the frustrations from the crowd. And this is also someone who came in... obviously AVB was there, and then it got switched to Pochettino, who obviously brought in a new style of play, a new exciting brand of football. And the crowd, he could see the crowd were clearly getting on side and were happy with what they're seeing. And maybe he's seeing similarities to, you know, the start of Pochettino to now, where it's been a complete switch up, because you've got to remember AVB was pretty dire football as well, and you know, Pochettino was a breath of fresh air, and maybe he's seeing similarities with Postecoglou, and that's why it excites him a bit.
Because there was also, because I know there's a bit of tension in the air with Spurs fans and Ange at the moment, with the way you know, it's up and down and up and down and up and down. There was something similar to that with Pochettino as well at some point, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was getting towards the end of the final year of it, wasn't it? It was.
No, I'm talking about in the early stages.
Oh no! Yeah, I remember at one point, sorry, back to the early stages, until Harry Kane scored that deflected goal against Aston Villa. There were murmurings. People were getting unhappy and discontented, but then obviously that free kick went in. The rest is history. I think what I'll take from there as well, obviously, same with the fans getting on the feeling the pressure and getting to them. During that time with Conte and Mourinho, it's when we had all this talk, and the tail end of Poch with the bad eggs, the people that didn't want to commit, the bad they just weren't doing what the manager said, and obviously we chuck managers under the bus. But when your captain speaks out, and obviously thankfully Hugo has come out with things, we had the managers, and those two were win now managers, weren't they? And the thing is, for me, as I always said, they were never ever going to get what they needed to win now, where they have other teams, and obviously that reflected in performances.
Yeah, we'll get into the quotes about Antonio and Jose, but I was actually thinking about this yesterday, about the jobs that Antonio and Jose both did at the clubs. I mean, wasn't too bad, was it? I think they get like a bad rap for the clubs the jobs that they did here. But when Antonio was sacked, he was a few points off top four. You never know what could have happened if he stayed on. But it was getting pretty toxic, and he was falling out with people left, right, and centre. But he was very close to the top four. The season before, obviously, he did. That's probably the best moment as a Spurs fan, probably since Pochettino left the club. Jose Mourinho, he got sacked a few days before a cup final. If he gets to take that cup final and wins it, you're probably talking about 2 successful tenures at the club.
I mean, was one day Ramos' tenure successful?
Well, he won a trophy, and
was
people
it
look back
successful?
In terms of winning a trophy, yeah.
Was it so he had a successful tenure at the club?
Well, for winning a trophy, yeah.
One day Ramos.
Yeah.
The guy who got 2 points from 8 games.
Yeah,
it was not a disaster.
2 points from 8 games was a disaster, but the trophy was absolutely brilliant.
I'm not saying the trophy wasn't brilliant. I mean, you wouldn't hire him again, would you?
No, I wouldn't hire him again.
Because he was a disaster.
I wouldn't hire Jose and Conte again, but looking back on it, in hindsight, their jobs wasn't a disaster.
Conte, I would agree that, but results-wise, he did okay. And obviously, I think the football, especially in the second season, wasn't good, and it really decreased. But he was still able to somehow get results to keep us competitive in that top 4 race. And before that Southampton game, I think if we would have won that Southampton game, we would have gone third at that time, albeit teams around us had games in hand. But I think that just goes to show, whatever you want to say about Conte, he could still get results. Jose was a bit different. He'd completely fallen away from the top 4 race at that point. We'd absolutely embarrassed ourselves against Zagreb as well in the Europa League. Yes, he could have got that cup final. We could have won it, but I don't think that would have made his tenure successful. It just would have meant we got a cup. But I think that would have been great for sure. Don't get me wrong. I would have been delighted with it. It doesn't mean he had a successful tenure, because he would have been. I think we would have finished very much mid-table, and embarrassing ourselves like we did in the Europa League is no way for us to be proud of our team. So I think Jose, he was top of the league for a time in that season, but it definitely fell flat a lot worse for him than it did for Conte, I think.
I do agree with that, but if let's say in hindsight Jose did stay on for the cup and won the cup, right? When one day Ramos was manager and we won the cup, we always go back to 2008 saying the last time we won a trophy. Yep. We look back at it,
but he was terrible manager.
I understand that, but we look back on it with good memories. That cup final, because we won a cup. It's the last time we won a trophy. Nobody thinks about how we fell off for the rest of that season. Nobody talks about that. Everyone talks about us winning the cup. So if Jose Mourinho does go and win that cup, do you think anyone's talking about the Zagreb game and talks about how bad we were actually? In
what sense? Are we talking about who's done a good job at the club, or are we talking about what we remember?
Probably what we remember.
Then yeah, obviously you remember the cup final,
exactly.
but you said but the discussion at the start was if he wins that cup, that means his tenure was successful.
I think it does.
I don't agree. So you said you agree that Ramos' tenure was successful?
No, I'm not saying. Listen, with me, Ramos is always going to be a sticky point. Yes, he's won a trophy, the only one under this reign, but the way he was hired and who he replaced is of massive significance to me. He was never going to succeed, especially the love Martin Jol had for this football club and the fans have for Martin Jol. But the end of the day is we're here to win trophies and win finals. And one day Ramos did win one. It's the only one we've got. If Jose had been given that final, and we all know what he does in finals, and we all know what his record was like against Pep, we wouldn't be talking about this 16 years. We'd be talking, what now, 4 years since we've won a trophy? The whole thing with 16 years without a trophy is becoming bigger and bigger.
I'm not saying I don't disagree with any of that.
I think it would have. I think if Jose wins that cup,
he doesn't keep his job.
Whether he keeps his job is another thing. But I think
because his tenure wasn't successful, that's why he doesn't keep his job.
Maybe success is the wrong word. Maybe look back on it with more favourably, basically.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, if he wins a trophy rather than getting sacked before it, then for sure, I agree with that. because he didn't win a trophy and he got sacked 6 days before it. And of course, it's known as a disaster because he didn't have that trophy to look back on. And if he did, then of course we'd look back at different, because he would have had a trophy, but he didn't get that opportunity. We know that.
Anyway, let's carry on with the quotes. After the Champions League final, the club was not ready to invest because there was also the new stadium to pay and there was COVID. Daniel Levy always tried to make the right decision for the club, and we were also a bit unlucky. At our best with Maurizio, we had to compete with Chelsea of Abramovich, the Man City of Guardiola, and the Liverpool of Klopp. It was really tough because it was a club ready to invest 50 million when others were ready to invest 100 million. But I feel we didn't give the highest credit that Maurizio deserved because he brought a new generation of players, Christian Eriksen, Dele Alli, Harry Kane, and many more to a new level. He created something really special in the building. You could feel the unity, and we really enjoyed competing for each other. We brought the club to the next step, but we had 3 finals and we could not score a goal in any of those games. I played 3 finals with Tottenham, 2 League Cups, 2015 and 2021, and a Champions League in which we didn't score a single goal. It was disappointing to have the experience all those emotions and for the adventure to come to an end in such a way. I don't know if everyone in the club and the team realised how difficult it is to reach a final and how hard it is to come back from that. I'm not sure we understood that this was perhaps the only chance in our career to win the Champions League, that the club we played for was not one that was programmed to win it, that we could have avoided ever hearing again the complaint that Tottenham never won anything, that our names might have been engraved in the club's history forevermore. This is what that penalty took from us. Yes, I mean, the words he says about Maurizio, I mean, it's obviously very true. He was a revelation for this club. The way he brought on all these players and made them the best in the Premier League on a shoestring budget as well. Yep. The way he did it. I mean, Maurizio, when you look back at his job, I mean, we said it at the time as well, but when you look back at his job, he's a pure magic man, what he did.
Of course.
Magician.
And, you know, as we had, how many times did we say at the time, he normalised overachievement?
Yeah.
We said it so often when he was our manager, and he was getting top 4. Like we even stopped talking about top 4. He was getting it so often, year after year. We were in the.
How many years in a row did you get it?
I think 4 years in a row. 4 years in a row.
How long was he our manager for?
5 years.
For between 2014 and 2019, yeah, so 5 years. And only the first season he didn't get in that top 4. We were saying, you know, fans have gotten so used to it, so used to finishing above Arsenal, so used to getting in that top 4 and being in the Champions League, that we just took it for granted that it was always going to be like that. And I always appreciate you have to strive for more, and that is something important. But you know, the way a lot of fans hounded him out at the time, didn't sit right with me at all. And I obviously wanted him to get some time to turn it around, and because let's be honest, the tough time he hit when he did get sacked, that was probably the first time that the progression under him kind of really dropped heavily. And you know, we didn't instead of giving him time to turn it around, we just decided to cut our losses and go in a different direction with Jose, which is obviously one of the biggest mistakes Levy's ever made, I think, in hindsight. I think it's fair to say. So we've been in the wilderness since then, and you know, at the moment, and just trying to get back to that where, you know, we're trying to build something again rather than how we were under Jose and Conte. It's all geared to short-termism and trying to get players in now to try and win games in the short term, but we didn't have the money that would justify that approach. So it was never going to work. So we're going in a different direction now. Sorry. But, yeah, I definitely think Pochettino was a brilliant appointment.
Yeah, unbelievable. And when he talks about the Champions League final as well, like, I know we all say it, like the Champions League final was ruined in the first minute via that penalty. I kind of hate that argument though, because like they get the penalty in the first minute, or was it after 30 seconds or something stupid like that? Like, they've got 90 more minutes. They got 90 more minutes in the game. Like, it's not like the game was just about to finish. If that penalty happens in the last minute, there's a bit of an argument there saying the game was ruined because of it, but it happens in the first minute.
Yeah, and it's another fun. We didn't turn up, did we? Like I said, don't get me wrong. It was
neither
a major
did they.
impact in the game.
Neither
It was
did
one
they.
of the worst Champions League finals. But you look at it on that day, and the players that were out there. Obviously, there's the great debate: should Kane have started? Should Moura have been given the chance? But there are players in that great team that you mentioned, in those players that Hugo mentioned before, that just didn't show up. And we've wanted players in cup finals to grab the ball by the horns and say, right, I'm going to lead us to victory, I'm going to get us over. And they just were incapable of doing it. Startling that I hadn't even realised, 3 finals, not a single goal. To show. I mean, when you say you got Harry Kane up front for all 3 of them, and the supporting cast, it's like, how is that possible?
So who are those finals against in the League
Chelsea.
Cup?
Chelsea in the League Cup, City against Mourinho, and
no, isn't he talking about that he played? Oh, yeah. Okay.
and the Champions League final.
Yeah.
But we did have a bunch of semis as well. We had semis against United, semis against Chelsea. We flopped in those.
The semi-final that hurts me the most is probably the Chelsea one when we lost 4-2, because we were brilliant that day. We were really good. Like, that's one of the ones that we really showed up for. And then we just kept giving away these goals, and Matic scores a bloody worldie, you know. So frustrating.
But we had opportunities to win trophies, didn't we? And we did, also, unfortunately, we just couldn't take that extra step. And those performances in the finals were poor, all of them, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the best one was probably maybe the one under Mason, but I don't know. They're all quite poor.
Do you not agree though? Like, I know we've sat here and said it before, Sim, about the Champions League final got ruined in the first minute. I mean, you've got 90 more minutes to show what you're about.
I agree. And I wouldn't say it's an excuse. First of all, it is a terrible decision, though. I'm saying it's no excuse to lose the game, you know, just because you concede in the first minute. But you also have got to take into account they were playing the best defensive team in Europe at the time, which is Liverpool, in that season. They were a phenomenal team, and if you give the best defence in Europe a 1-0 head start, it's obviously going to make it a lot more difficult. And so it proved, if the game stays at 0-0 and they can't just sit on their lead like they did for 90 minutes, it could have been a very different game. So I did think it changed the dynamic of the game, and it changed it not in Tottenham's favour at all, and it made it a lot harder. And so it proved, and we ended up losing. But you can't sit here after the game and say we conceded in the first minute, so that means that the game was over. It was not over, and I don't think you can't say that we lost 1-0 in the first minute. That's not how football works. As you said, we got the whole game to try and claw our way back, but it doesn't help when you give the best team in Europe a 1-0 head start unjustifiably. Yeah. And that's always going to be difficult to take in, especially when you go and lose the game.
Agreed. And back on his point about, the players, the generation of players that Maurizio brought through. I mean, just looking back on it, the amount of players he made into like some of the best in the Premier League, if not the best in Europe at the time. I mean, I think people under-regard and underestimate how good Christian Eriksen actually was, because he's never in the conversation and the topic for best 10s in the Premier League, right? And when he was at Tottenham, when he was at full pomp, he was, because I think like the way he left Spurs, it's kind of clouded a lot of people's judgment. But when he was at his best, I mean, he was one of the best.
Yeah, and I think as well, since he had, what happened to him at the Euros and he's come back, and he hasn't, I think he's been good. He hasn't quite been as good as he was at Tottenham since then. So I think people forget how good he was at Tottenham. This guy was a machine of chance creating, always near the top of the assists charts. He had a good goal record as well. He scored quite a lot of goals from outside the box, and I think his goal contribution record was really, really special. And I think a lot of people forget when he was younger, in his mid-20s, what a special player, a world-class talent he was. And I agree, when people bring up the conversation of 10s, he's very rarely in there, and he should be.
I'm so the opposite.
Really?
That's not totally opposite. When he first came, I was delighted, and he started off brilliant. Free kicks, exceptional. Corners, brilliant. And then I looked at the season we came second in the league, and the season before and after. For 3 or 4 months, he's untouchable. Absolutely untouchable and unstoppable and incredible. Then he just goes missing. He went missing in the Champions League final. He was one of the poor performers. When the big games come and you want your big players to stand up, I just think he went missing. Towards the end, his conduct was horrific. It got to the point that I used to call him Where's Wally? Because it used to be Where's Eriksen? Because 3 months he'd be exceptional, and then the rest you couldn't find him. Well, on his day, he was great, though. On his day, he was great, but do I think it was a very, very good play for Spurs? Yes. Do I think he is really overrated by his overall performance? Yeah, I do.
I think that's crazy, because I think when you look at the numbers that he pulled out for Spurs, I mean, No, it couldn't have been better because the numbers that he got, some of the players that you regard as the best could only dream of those kind of numbers. In 4 seasons, he clocked up the best part of, if not just about over 50 assists. I mean, that is nuts.
Yeah,
50 assists over the course of 4 seasons.
In the 3 months, it was really, really good.
Come on, man. 50 assists. In 15, 16, 14 assists. In 16, 17, 15, then 10, and then 12. Over the course of those 4 seasons, there were times where he was just unplayable.
Correct. There were times, and there were other times where he was completely missing.
The good definitely outweighs the bad 100%. No doubt about it. I think he was the best 10 by far in that moment in time in the Premier League.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it was a time when there weren't many 10s, but yeah, for sure. He was
but
the best.
Ozil came to Arsenal at that time, and everyone's like, oh, Ozil this, Ozil that. I mean, he's not even fit to lace Eriksen's boots in that moment in time.
Yeah, that I'd say.
But then you've got players like Moussa Dembele, the way Poch brought him up, Harry Kane, Dele Alli, phenomenon. I mean, Kyle Walker, Danny Rose, Hugo Lloris himself, Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld. I mean, all these players, his man management skills to get them playing at their absolute peak was just incredible.
Yeah, you mentioned Jan Vertonghen, obviously my love for that man. But you miss out. You know what I also thought was incredible under him was Kieran Trippier.
Very true.
Kieran Trippier was a great find, and what he did with him was brilliant.
Next quotes are on the management of Jose Mourinho and the club's decision to try and change their identity. And he says, yes, he's a great man. If you are open to improve, to learn, it's great to have him on your side. The only question that everyone asks is when the club decided to split with Maurizio, we had a proper football style. The club decided to change and try and win by appointing Mourinho. All the comments about Maurizio were the same. Oh yeah, his team play amazing football, but they've never won. So obviously, Daniel and the board decided to bring someone that can help the club to win. You cannot reapproach anything about that. Even if I felt the departure of Maurizio was really hard. So, I mean, I felt like this at the time when Maurizio got sacked. I thought it was ludicrous to bring in Mourinho. Obviously, when Mourinho came in, I quickly jumped on the bandwagon. But I thought it was absolutely ludicrous at the time. Do you remember, Sim, when we did that that video when Maurizio got sacked? We were nearly in tears. Both in complete disagreement that Maurizio should have been sacked. I think at the time you wanted Mourinho to come in. You wanted him as next manager. I wanted Ten Hag as the next manager. So I think it both says that we were both probably wrong in our assessment.
No, but he's saying you couldn't argue with it, isn't he?
He's saying
last line.
that, but I'm saying we should be arguing with it because you need to stay on the same path.
Yeah,
I'm saying he's wrong.
Yeah, I agree. And I know it fell apart from Maurizio in his last season. And it was, it was a time where maybe you have to, double down on him and give him time to figure things out, or you go in a different direction. I understood at the time, having sacked Maurizio and going in that Mourinho direction where you've got clearly a good set of players who had gone so close and hadn't quite made it, just got to a Champions League final. Can Mourinho get something out of them where they can go over the line? But it was the wrong direction, and you could see that the fans weren't happy with how we were playing. I think the players bought into it for a bit, but as soon as things went against them, I don't know if they stopped buying into it or Mourinho got frustrated or what happened, but that also fell apart. And I think when you have a manager like Mourinho who basically needs certain specific kind of things in the transfer market to get his approach to work. How Postecoglou was talking about, when you talk about leadership and all that stuff, either you let it grow in the team or you buy it. He's always buying it, buy this, buy that. He doesn't let anything grow in the team. He's always about buying everything in. And the way we were spending money at that time, I don't think was ever going to work for a manager like Mourinho.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to buy it in with like Højbjerg. Højbjerg came in under, wasn't he his first? Matt Doherty,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, our transfer policy
and
under
Dyer
Mourinho was shocking.
Yeah, we bought Bale in, but he was still a 32, 33-year-old Bale. And, you're giving him players like Ndombele who, wouldn't do what Mourinho needed him to do, albeit his best period was probably under Mourinho, but still, if Mourinho's the kind of manager who you get in because you want to win trophies, we're not getting him in to get top 4. And I don't think he was ever given the tools to ever seriously compete for trophies.
I think it's interesting as well. Like, you hear a lot of the players talk that were working under Mourinho at Spurs. A lot of them speak about it quite fondly, about how they actually got on really well with Jose and how he's a really good manager and how they enjoyed working under him. I mean, why did it go so sour with him?
Well, I think a lot of it was, like you said, when the announcement came that Poch was gone, I was devastated. I was uncontrollably fuming, upset, devastated. I remember that moment. Then obviously Jose came in, and for me, straight away when Jose was coming in, it was like, right, the trophy drought's going to go. But it was obviously a complete vanity project because he wanted him for so long. And like Simeon said, Daniel Levy knew his MO. It's come in, spend hundreds of millions, win everything, turn it toxic, off you go. That's never going to happen, ever. But the players would have identified there's a proven winner, isn't it? When they see a man walk through the door that has literally won the lot, they're like, this guy's going to do wonders for my career. And you said we're going to speak about the documentary. You saw the meetings he had with them all saying, this is what I'm going to do for you, this is what I need. And it's just like the players didn't want to get with it, did it? We didn't buy the calibre of players. He's so demanding of everything, and we bought the players that wouldn't do what was asked.
I just think... I'm sure he was a good manager. I'm sure the players did like him. I'm sure he tried his best. But at the end of the day, the team just wasn't very good. It had a lot of ageing players. The back line was nowhere near good enough at the time. We didn't really invest anywhere near enough in the back line when we had him as manager. A lot of the players who were good under Pochettino had started to age and started not to be good enough as well. And look, we needed a rebuild, and he never really got that. He got given Matt Doherty, as you say, and got given Rodon, and Reguilon was signed, but he wasn't terrible, but still wasn't like a top player. We still had Sanchez and Dyer playing centre back every game, and an aging
Reguilon,
Toby.
when we signed him, was a major coup.
Yeah, I'm not saying he was. I don't think Reguilon I'll point to specifically, but obviously in hindsight, he's not like the best left back in the league. But I think it's whatever. Reguilon is not the worst deal. But then Højbjerg, he was good at Southampton and not a bad player for us, but he's never going to be the general that's going to win you a league, and all these. Delhi had completely fallen off a cliff at that time as well. Mora wasn't good enough really at that point.
He probably had his best moment under Jose in the 10 in those few games.
Yeah, yeah, he was good, but he was never great. He was never consistently brilliant. So
the Mora sexual fan club got born.
Yeah, I didn't mind Mora as a player. I'm just saying. You can't. I don't think he was ever consistently good enough to be where Mourinho wanted him to be. So with that squad he was given, it was never going to be more than a good achievement to finish top 4, let alone win a trophy. And Mourinho doesn't like that.
Do you feel like Jose got the best out of Son and Kane?
Yeah, those two he did, because they're elite players with elite mentalities.
Do you reckon their best seasons for Spurs came under Jose?
Combined.
Together for sure, but individually,
I think better.
Together for sure. There's no question about that.
I think Son's best season was the Golden Boot he got under Conte. But Kane's best season, when he won the Golden Boot and best playmaker, that was probably his best season. Yeah.
And obviously, I think it's safe to say that maybe looking back at it, saying everything that you're saying. Maybe it wasn't Jose's fault that he did fail at Spurs, and it was the hierarchy for not giving him what he actually needed at the club at the time. That's the reality.
Yeah, I think 100%.
Yeah,
we were very critical of the hierarchy at that point, of how they were dealing with Mourinho for sure, and I think they got a lot to answer for. If you're going to appoint a manager like Mourinho, you have to operate in a different way. Now you can operate let's say, for example, how we're doing now. We don't have a manager like Mourinho. It's not the goal. The goal isn't to win straight away and be challenging for league titles straight away. So you can afford to operate with younger players and all this kind of stuff. But if you've got a manager like Mourinho, you have to operate you have to keep pace with the top clubs.
Right.
That's how you got to do it. And if you don't do that, then a manager like Mourinho is going to get frustrated. The fans are going to get frustrated with all the terrible football with players who aren't good enough to play it, and it's going to be a disaster, and that's what it turned out.
You know what? Just to add to that as well, what I think we saw there, even with Arsenal and the filth with Arteta, is a lot of the aggravation and unhappiness amongst our set of fans and their set of fans with the manager or the way they're playing was during COVID. So all the games were behind closed doors. If those doors had been open, obviously Arteta out was going nuts at that time. If it was in the stands, would Arteta have paid for his job because of the crowd reaction and the way the team were performing? And again, you could say that with Jose. because we were getting very, very fed up with the way that we were playing football and the quality there. Would the crowd have made a bigger impact into what would have happened with them too?
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with the sacking of Jose Mourinho, and I think I was calling for it at the time. It's the timing. You cannot sack the man a few days before a cup final. That was a total disgrace from this football. It really was. Glenn Hoddle was talking about it on the overlap, I think, not long ago, and he was saying, that was one of the biggest mistakes Daniel Levy and Tottenham have done over the past couple of years. And I completely agree, man. How can you bring in a manager for whose sole purpose is to win a trophy and then sack him 6 days before a cup final? And then give it to Ryan Mason to face against Pep Guardiola, albeit he did fairly well for his, for his experience. But Jose had a real shot of winning that, a real shot. And
there was a stat, wasn't there? There was a stat, wasn't there, that was shown before that. Before then, Pep had won every single final he'd played in except for one, and that one manager to beat him,
Jose.
Yeah,
and we'd already beaten City before in that season as well. Like it already happened. So, it was ridiculous that the timing. I was calling for him to be sacked after Zagreb. It didn't happen. Whatever.
How long was there between Zagreb?
I don't know. I don't know how long there was. But
do you remember what month Zagreb was in?
I think February, wasn't it?
It must have been the same month then.
No, because the Carabao Cup final got pushed like April or something.
Oh yeah,
got pushed really far forward. So I was calling for him to be sacked after that, because after Zagreb I didn't see any path forward for him after that, but they kept with him, maybe because they felt like he was still close enough to top four to get it, and then they kept with him up until the bloody week of the final, and then they sack him, and that is just nonsense and unforgivable from the board. I don't understand the logic there.
Yeah, there is no logic.
Yeah.
There is no logic at all. He speaks in the book about installing the cameras for the Amazon documentary and how it impacted the team. And he says, the tensions that would only grow following a decision by the club that would affect the team's day-to-day lives, a decision made without the consent of either the squad or the manager to install cameras everywhere for Amazon's series about Spurs. In light of the sum mentioned, around about £10 million, we wondered whether whose season and activities would be affected. All those asked to mic up each day would get a cut. The answer wasn't slow in coming in, as no. So when the film crew placed little microphones on some of the canteen tables, we went and sat at other ones. We had to be careful at all times. The only place where we could speak freely was the training dressing room. We got them to agree that would remain out of bounds. Otherwise, they had mics and cameras everywhere, even at some practice sessions, which was no small matter. It was a constraint, and it had consequences. It's really interesting because obviously the Amazon documentary was started at the end stages of Pochettino, and then it kind of drifted into Mourinho. And I bet you both Mourinho and Poch were probably really fuming at that.
Well, I think it's disgraceful to agree to something like that when it's going to basically exploit the privacy of the players and the manager and all that kind of stuff without their permission. Obviously, they're not doing it without them knowing that, but they're telling them this is happening, deal with it kind of thing. And that is no way to treat who are the people who are the most important people at this football club, who are the players and the manager and the people who who have to perform on the pitch every single week. And they have to entertain the fans. They have to be in front of the media when things go wrong. They have to put in performances to win high-level football games in the Premier League. And to just treat them like that, like not even involve them in the discussion whether this is happening. Are you okay with this? Like, do you think this is something that you wouldn't mind happening? Is this something maybe you'd look forward to being involved in? Is this something you'd enjoy? Just saying, this is happening, deal with it. There's going to be cameras in the room, and we're getting paid 10 million, so you're just going to have to suck it up. Like, that is classic Levy, to be honest, and it's something that is a disgrace. That is, I think you should, if you're going to do it, you sit the manager and the squad down. You say, this is what we think they're doing. We think it's a really exciting program. I think the viewers will love it. The fans will really get to know you a bit more, get to know your personality. But we're only going to go ahead with it if you guys are okay with it, and if you guys are happy to be on camera in all these intimate moments, and you guys are happy for these one-on-one meetings for Mourinho to be shown on TV, and are you happy for your conversations in the canteen to be broadcast to millions of viewers? If you're okay with it, we're going to go ahead with it. But if you're really not comfortable, then we won't do it. And that's the conversation you need to have. But clearly they didn't have that. Lloris says there, they basically signed up saying, we're doing a documentary, all of this is going to be recorded and you're just going to live with it. And I think that is no way of conducting yourself, in my opinion, because it's going to rub people up the wrong way, if anything.
Of course it is. There's no way to run a football club where all your players and all your staff and the management and everyone have to walk around eggshells around the training centre, around the canteen, around everywhere, apart from in one spot. Imagine everything. They used to just probably sit silence for the whole time they're there, and then as soon as they get in the training ground, dressing room, then everything comes out.
Well, you look at it, you think Hugo's obviously very well in a good place to say this, because obviously he's the captain, so I'm sure the captain, manager, chairman meet and have those meetings. But he says himself about not being in the changing room. Well, I clearly remember Dele Alli going mad, and when Eric Dyer's brother, they had that big bust up about losing to Norwich. There's also when Heung-min Son and Hugo have that falling. It's like you come into work that we've all had a go at managers, or people have a go at managers for saying everything out, and they say you do it in private, private. Yeah, when it's the owner of our football club doing it and talking to the players, there's nothing at this football club.
Yeah.
It makes me laugh. I mean, like you said, for the players to feel that anti about it and still feel like they're just what you feel is irrelevant, it's just horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is horrible.
It's just going to make them feel resentful about it. And especially you don't involve them in the discussion. If you involve them in it and you say, look, we're thinking of doing this and we are going to do it, but we would love your input. Like, we want to know what you're comfortable with, what you're not. But it seems like that conversation didn't happen. It was just, this is happening all and you're not involved in the conversation. They're the ones who have to be front and center of this documentary, and they're not involved at all about whether they are happy about this happening or not. And that is no way to run that kind of operation.
Making Tottenham Hotspur into a sitcom when none of the actors are paid or none of the actors are giving their consent to it as well. It's just madness.
Well, you look at when Hugo has said, if we saw the cameras and the mic set up at this table, which would have been the table they sit at, and you know it's all about routine and I sit here, they go and sit in another place, like say, listen, we're not comfortable with this, and still it doesn't matter.
Yeah, really disgraceful, to be fair. Then he speaks about what went wrong with Antonio Conte and admits that his obsessiveness with winning made things very complicated. And he says, I found Antonio Conte to be quite a character driven by victory, which gave him energy, but he found it very hard to control his frustration when we started drawing, let alone losing, because his inner torment had to get out. And if he was tormented, then everyone had to share his torment too, and things could get very complicated very fast. He told me once that in any given week, his happiness lasted an hour just after winning, and that was it. In training, he oversaw everything, organised tactical sessions with 10 outfield players against one goalie, but it was hard for the creative players to find their place in his restrictive gameplay. His rigidity of the structure and set sequences did us a lot of good at first, but after a few months, teams learned how to play against us, and it became tougher to win. During matches, Conte was extreme and eruptive. As he appeared, garnering respect and fear. Such a strong personality pushed wingers to prefer to play on the side opposite the dugout. That's mad, isn't it? Just get as far away as from.
That's what Hazard said he used to do. He said he used to swap wings whenever Conte was on, because he just didn't want to be on that side.
And then he says, I've never forgotten about our first defeat under Conte, a 2-1 loss to NS Mura in Slovenia in the UEFA Conference League. Even though I wasn't playing, I was still entitled to his screams and reapproaches just like everyone else. In the squad meetings, we would spend at least 30 minutes a day doing a video analysis, not forgetting the intermittent preparation camps at our training centre. After the defeat in Maribor, he screamed, Mura! Mura! Who's Mura? We lost to Mura! I can still hear him now. If a player needed a little love, he'd better not knock at Conte's door, for Conte trust is earned in training. He has no filter. He's sincere and honest. He's a manager who lives only by results, whereas from a player's perspective, performance is important too. That season, when we lost 3-2 to Manchester United, the Ronaldo hat-trick, a result which didn't reflect our performances, I told Pierre-Emile Højbjerg and Harry Kane in the dressing room, they may have just beaten us, but I bet you we finish above them. And so we did, ending up in 4th place and battering Arsenal 3-0 on the last day, situating ourselves halfway between Conte's demanding nature and a little self-management, because by dint of being whipped and screamed at, we eventually stuck our fingers in our ears. So they stopped listening to him after a certain time.
Which is never a sustainable thing. And that maybe indicates why it fell apart really in his second season. And
that's probably like the way Conte's career has gone under every kind of thing. Like, you can only listen to someone screaming at you for so long, I guess.
But he does get results, and even at Tottenham he got results. And it did fall apart in the second season, maybe because we didn't, you look at the team we needed to improve on, and he was given Longley, and I mean Bastuma's a good player, but didn't quite fit what he wanted to do, and Richarlison as well, didn't quite had injury problems, and he didn't quite fit what maybe he wanted or and stuff like that. So, and also we still had Sessegnon, and we had Doherty and Emerson at wing backs as well. That these aren't ever going to be players that can push you on to kick on from that fourth place finish that he did. Look. And the fact of the matter is, he kept us competitive for fourth in that second season, whether we like it or not. Maybe we wouldn't have got there even if he stayed on. But with 8 games to go before he got sacked, we were right in the mix, and that's a fact.
It's never where he wanted to be.
That's the thing. That's why he exploded.
Yeah, when we finished fourth that season, he was fully expecting to get players ready to push on for a title challenge.
Yeah.
He didn't want to compete for fourth again. He'd already done that.
Correct. And that's, and you can see what Hugo's saying there, his insatiable appetite for winning and improvement and competing, and he's only going to be happy when we get the results. And that's why even in the second season we weren't playing well in a lot of games, but we were getting results for a lot of the time, but we weren't getting good enough results to keep us in contention for what he really wanted, which is a title. And that was never going to be a situation which was acceptable to him, which is why he exploded at the end.
Yeah. Any takeaways?
Yeah, no, there's a lot. I mean, obviously, when he's saying about the shouting and screaming, it's very much with these Spurs players, it's the carrot or the stick treatment, isn't it? And if they're expecting love, as he said, after losing to Mura and all these, what were they expecting? I'm sure they got love after beating Arsenal 3-0 that you mentioned. What's it? If you look at it, he comes in and gets results. He does his way, and again, it goes back to what we're saying. Mourinho, he's had winners, leaders that can sort this out, and we didn't have them in that squad. I love him or hate him with Conte. He got the job done, and remember, as you said, with that getting fourth, that's when we also announced we're going to get that £150 million war chest, and we're going to make a real surge and go mad with signings of quality, which didn't quite work out, those signings. But it's really the carrot or the stick treatment. And listen, Conte was in a good place for us. People may say the football was not the best. Was it because it's Conte's style? Was it because of the quality of players we had?
But it was good in his first 6 months.
First 6 months, we could have said when we got fourth, we were outstanding.
Yeah, we were battering teams and playing fast, direct football.
We went to Leicester, Man City, all of that.
Some really great football then.
Incredible. With Kulusevski and Bentancur coming in. But then when push come to shove and the times got rough, he didn't have the people to bend on, did he?
Conte was recently speaking about it, saying that he achieved the max he could with Tottenham. And I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the way he got us to finish fourth that season was nothing short of a miracle. Yeah. Like, when he came in, we were in such a bad way, weren't we? Like, a terrible way. Yeah. I think where were we? We were like 8th, 9th, something around.
Probably low, I don't know. But look, we were just not creating chances. We were losing 3-0 every week under Nuno. Yeah. Kane was, looking to leave, and he was playing awfully. Yeah. Like, it was just a disaster all around. Like, the only signings we'd made that summer, like Brian Hill, and I guess we had San Romero, but he hadn't kind of acclimatised yet to the Premier League, and we were a mess when he came in, absolute mess.
And the manner that he got us to finish in the top 4, smashing Arsenal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, ending hopes of their dreams of making a return to the Champions League in the first time in a long time. I mean, the manner that we got top 4 that year was brilliant, wasn't it?
Fantastic.
But yeah, it all fell apart in the
But I agree,
season.
he did get the maximum in terms of results-wise. I don't know about performance-wise, but results-wise, he probably did get the maximum out of this team, especially in his first season. He definitely did. Second season, the performances weren't really good, but the results were not horrific. They really weren't, and we were competitive for probably what we should have been in that season, which is a top. We ended up finishing 8th because after we sacked him, we fell apart completely. We ended up losing I think 6 of our last 8 games, getting battered by Newcastle, we lost to Liverpool, we lost to Brentford, like horrible defeats, and even worse performances than we were seeing before. But while Conte was in charge, Yeah, the performances were hard to watch, but the results were still not bad, keeping us
Yeah.
competitive.
And again, another manager who's felt the fate of Daniel Levy in his tenureship here at Tottenham, because if he was given what he needed, he probably would have gone and won the title.
Yep.
Or very close to anyway.
I mean, Liverpool and who was going for the title then? It was City and Arsenal, I think, that season, wasn't it? I don't know if he would have beaten City to the title, but
Arsenal?
maybe.
Was it Arsenal?
Yeah, it was Arsenal that year.
Oh, yeah.
That was when they were 8 points clear with
Yeah,
5 games to go, and they bottled it.
Maybe we wouldn't have actually won it, but I think we would have been up there.
We could have been up there,
Seriously,
because especially when you have Kane and Son and all, when you have those players, we just need to build the team around them.
Yeah. And he just wasn't given what he was needed. Once again, you bring in a winning manager, like we said under Jose Mourinho, and you just bring in players like Clement Longley and stuff like that. It's just nowhere near good enough. Nowhere near good enough. And Brian Hill actually came in under Nuno, didn't he?
Yes.
But I guess we had Coutinho Romero. That was a good sign. That was also under Nuno.
I think we
but-
signed Pape Sarr.
I'm saying what's important for Conte is those centre backs and those wing backs, and we had Dyer still playing regularly, Sanchez, Longley, Sessegnon, Doherty, Emerson, all these players who have to be they're very important players in this system. And I know we got Porro, but I think Porro played a couple of games before he left.
Porro was signed in January.
Yeah, he played. I think Conte had him for only 2 or 3 games,
Yeah.
and then obviously he had a difficult start against Leicester, but then he got sacked. So, in key positions, we just didn't have players that were fit for purpose.
Yeah, I mean, if you give Conte this back five we have now,
Yeah, he might probably does a lot
absolutely
better.
laughing. He's absolutely laughing with this back five, but it wasn't to be.
No.
Yeah. I've said it many a time. I would love to see a Spurs Conte team with the squad that we have now, because I think that we would absolutely smash it.
Probably.
And last but not least, Hugo Lloris admits receiving a luxury watch from Daniel Levy before the 2019 Champions League final made him question if Tottenham wanted to win trophies. He says, "We'd all have one engraved memory though. 4 days before the final, Daniel Levy called us together to announce that with the support of a sponsor, we would each receive a luxury aviator watch from the club. At first, we were all excited to see these elegant boxes. Then we opened them and discovered that he had the back of each timepiece engraved with the player's name and Champions League finalist, 2019 finalist. Who does such a thing in a moment like this? I still haven't gotten over it. And I'm not alone. If we'd won, he wouldn't have asked for the watches back to have winner engraved instead. I have considerable respect and esteem for the man and all he's done for the club as chairman. I got to know him, but there are things he is simply not sensitive to. Magnificent as the watch is, I have never worn it. I would have preferred there to be nothing on it. With an engraving like that, Levy couldn't have been surprised if we had been 1 down after a couple of minutes, so it was written. At the post-match reaction at the hotel, I had the impression that some people from the club and certain players were not sufficiently despondent at having lost it. I would have liked people to come up to me and say, "Don't worry, Hugo, never again. We'll give you the means for a comeback." But when I returned to the room of the night of the final, I think I had the same feeling as Maurizio and Harry. Does the club really want to win? Real Madrid would never have celebrated a lost final, and we shouldn't have either. Apparently as well, I've read before there was a whole party after the final as well for the squad and stuff like that, because... But I get the whole notion that, Spurs is the first time in a European final, but this story is an absolute disgrace, man. It's an absolute disgrace. Like, if that tells you that this guy is not like fully focused on winning, then what else will? You want to go, Brian?
Listen, I've got to be careful what I say here, because everything will come out. Listen, we've seen him do it when he's charged Friedel. He's charged Friedel shirts in his retirement.
This is a different case.
No, but I'm saying he's also done that when he charged Modric's club for sending shirts. Now, I mean, as I was saying to you earlier, Hugo Lloris the season before was in a World Cup final for France. I highly doubt that the chief of the French Footballing Federation came and said, "Well done, finalists, well done, all good." It just smacks of, "Well done, you've got to the promised land financially.
Yeah.
I'm all good. Well done. Here's something to announce it." Listen, that doesn't excuse the players' performance in that game, and it can be said easier saying this because obviously it was a bad performance and we lost. But what kind of message does that send out? And I love the begin with the support of a sponsor. This was arranged, not because Daniel did it with his own back. Support of a sponsor to help it. Listen, it's a nice watch. I saw in that documentary again when Jan left, we gave him a gift. Yeah, that's because he's leaving. He's played his last game. You don't go into a final and say, "Here's a watch to say well done, finalist." You almost says winners.
Yeah.
Or you see when people lose the Champions League final or a World Cup, the people that get their silver medal have it on. First thing they do is take it off. They don't want anything to do with it. They want to disassociate from it because they're seen as, this is my loser's medal. Well, the owner of your football club is saying, hey, well done for getting to the final. That's well done. It's all about the finances, isn't it? It's all it matters about with this football club and this ownership right now.
And then you hear the quotes from Hugo here saying, I had the same feeling as Maurizio and Harry. Does the club really want to win? I mean, that hurts, man.
Yeah.
That really
100%,
hurts.
and that's always something we've questioned. We've known, to be honest, for a very long time about the ownership, about Daniel Levy, and obviously, when it comes to that question, when I think about what Levy's thinking in that moment, he's because obviously it was at the time, if you remember, we hadn't signed anyone that summer, right? So it was actually the fact that we did get to a Champions League final was a miraculous thing for Pochettino to do, because we hadn't signed anyone, and he had to basically go into a season with no new signings and just basically deal with what he had. And
Bundles of injuries as well.
Bundle was injured, and he got top 4, and he got to a Champions League final. So it was a miraculous management achievement from Pochettino to do that. But when you're a week before the final, when everyone should be focused on putting everything they have into winning this game, you, as much as getting to a final, you've done well to do that. It doesn't mean it's an achievement to do that. It just means you've done extremely well to get to a final. It doesn't mean that's anything to celebrate. It doesn't mean that's anything to look back on and say, we did that, but you didn't actually win it. You haven't actually taken the extra step of lifting the trophy and getting over the line. Getting to a final is not winning a trophy. It's just getting you the opportunity to maybe win a trophy. That's all you've done. And yes, the fact of the matter is, we had no right to have been in that position that season because of the position Levy put us in, ironically, because with no signings. So we've done well, very well, to get to a final of a Champions League under those circumstances. But when you're in a final, you can't then look at that situation and think we've achieved something, because you haven't achieved anything. All you've done is get to a final. You actually have to take the extra step. But I don't think Levy saw it that way, because I'll tell you why. What do you reckon the cash difference is between getting to a final and winning it? It's probably not that much different. I mean, probably a few million here or there. I think it's not a massive difference between. I'm sure there's a difference, but it's not a massive difference between winning the whole thing and getting to a final. So from Levy's perspective, we're on the world stage. Tottenham are going to be played in front of millions, right?
7 million.
7 million. So it's negligible.
Dollars.
$7 million or £5 million or something. So it's negligible, the difference between winning it and getting to the final. Not a massive difference in terms of the overall figure. So from Levy's point of view, he is probably nearly just as happy as
Not like Levy to want to give up 7 million, though.
No, of course, but from his point of view, the main achievement is getting to this game where, in front of the whole world, it's one of the biggest football game of the calendar. It's one with the it's more watched than the Super Bowl. This game, millions and hundreds of millions of people tune in to watch it. It's you've got your team in front of a world audience, and it's an unbelievable thing for the football club in terms of the awareness and the brand and all the stuff that can come with that. But and in terms for him, obviously winning it would be a different level. But money-wise and business-wise, he probably feels like they've done their job getting to the final. Like, he probably doesn't feel like winning it is the be-all and end-all. He just feels like getting to the final was good enough. And that mentality is probably not what Pochettino, Kane and Lloris have. They feel like, we want to be in this competition to win it. We want to get to the final and not just to be happy to be in the final. We want to be in the final to win it. And if we don't win it this year, we want to build on that and go again next year. But Levy's almost like Levy was like, what a brilliant achievement to get to a final. Look what it's done for our football club in terms of the money it's brought in. Look what it's done for our football club in terms of the awareness it's got us. Not in terms of, look what it could do for our trophy cabinet. And that's the difference in mentality, I think.
No, I feel like the way Daniel Levy was watching this final and how he was after the game, just being like, like when you're watching a neutral game and you don't really care who wins, but you prefer maybe this team to win to that team, and then after the game, you can still hold your smile and you're not as distraught as maybe the fans were and Kane, Lloris and Maurizio were after that final. Daniel Levy probably was walking around after the final, pockets full of money, pockets full of cash, with the biggest smile, hosting a party after the Champions League final after losing it. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace. Do you think, like, the guys that you've seen teams over recent years, over the last 20 years, that have been to Champions League finals that don't usually get there? Maybe like the likes of Dortmund have got there a couple of times. Back in the day, Leverkusen have got there. I can't remember. I'm sure there's been other cases of it. Like, do you really think they're celebrating getting to a Champions League final before actually competing in it? You've got to wait till after and see how it plays out. You've got to try your most to win it. And, like, to go and give a prize a few days before the Champions League final was even played just tells all the players, and the fans didn't know about it at the time, but it just sends a message, doesn't it?
Well, you look at Sim just mentioned as well about the advertising and the world space that it gets to get into the final. You look at it, we've all said, and people say we can't attract top four players because we're not in the top four, and you need to be in the top four to attract them, and we don't. And we haven't signed anyone since our top four run, I believe, that's top four ready. That has come in. People like Son have gone on to show they're Champions League elect standard players, but we haven't signed anyone apart from Van der Vaart and Perisic, in my opinion, that were Champions League elect quality players. But what it has done is allowed loads of new sponsorship, loads of new money to come in, and that's the difference. Whereas we all want
it really helped Spurs become the what is it? The one of those profitable teams in the world.
That's what it does. That's what it matters. That's the thing. It's about being the most profitable team in the world, not the most successful football team in the world. Mm-hmm. And that
is success for him, though. That's the problem.
The thing. That's why getting to a final was success, and not necessarily having to win it. Obviously, he wants to win it, I'm sure, but it doesn't really bother him too much if we win it or don't.
He wants it just like he wants, any team to win anything, but it doesn't bother him that we don't win it afterwards, and that's the thing that really hurts when you've got a chairman that's not driven by success on the football club. Football is not the first and foremost thing that he cares about, and that's what it should be at a football club. That should be the biggest driver as a chairman, is to go and win things, not just to be there to make up the numbers.
Agreed. And you see the latest thing in the NFL poster. The premium package poster saying "Stand where NFL stars stood." It's like
for the quarterfinals. For the quarterfinals.
What? What about what about where Kane stood or where Son stood? No, where NFL stars stood. Like, what is this football club? When I see things like that,
correct. Always after a defeat. Always after a defeat.
But it's embarrassing, man. It's embarrassing. Like. We look back on it so fondly, that Champions League run, and then this thing comes out saying, "Oh, he's given out trophies."
But Levy said it himself when he was asked what his big achievements are. He said getting to a Champions League final. That's what he said.
Yep.
He said it himself.
Champions League final. That's because he's got no other achievements really to talk about.
Yeah. Correct. Oh, he didn't mention the cuppy one.
no one mention of that, and that tells you everything about where his ambitions are. That tells you everything.
Because what gets Tottenham more on the world stage for him? What gets Tottenham more money? Getting to a Champions League final, winning a trophy. It's getting to a Champions League final. That's what it's all. It's all about. Getting more money into the club.
And Mourinho spoke about it after he left. Conte spoke about it. And soon, probably Andrew's going to speak about it as well. It's like, how can any manager be expected to deliver success at this football club when the hierarchy don't really care about the success of this football club?
Well, it goes back further. When you did the great interview with Martin, it starts from there and then just progressively goes on, whether it's ex-players, ex-sporting directors, from all kinds of facets of the club, all rungs of the ladder. People are coming out and speaking. It's just it's a horrible place to be when you realise that this is what it is. And like we said, the lovely new VPN partnership's been announced as well today. So more partners than a serial bigamist we have at Tottenham Hotspur. It's all geared towards the maintaining and financial growth of this football club, not the quality coming on the pitch and the rewards of it.
Yeah, just makes me really angry, man. It makes me really angry, but I think we'll leave it there. I'm just kind of speechless. Fucking Daniel Levy. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Have a safe trip back to Canada, Mr. Sherwood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel and Mr. Daniel.
Good to have you here, man.
It's always a pleasure being with my brothers. Always a pleasure being in the studio, and Can't wait for April.
Yeah, looking forward to it, my friend. But thank you, everyone out there, for joining us today. We'll see you all very soon. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always,
Come on, you Spurs.